My name is Denise, and I'm 52 years old. 22 years ago, I held my newborn daughter Sarah in my arms and promised her I would always be there for her biggest moments. I kept that promise through scraped knees, heartbreaks, and sleepless nights studying for exams. I thought her college graduation would be our celebration together, a moment where all those years of sacrifice would feel worth it. I pictured us sitting together, her finding my face in the crowd when they called her name. What I didn't expect was for my own daughter to decide I wasn't worthy of the front row at the most important day of her life. But sometimes, when people underestimate you, that's when you show them exactly who you've always been. Before we dive into what happened that day, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, because trust me, you won't believe what I did when my daughter thought she could push me aside. The cracks in my family started 3 years ago when my world fell apart in the most predictable yet devastating way. I discovered my husband Marcus was having an affair with Patricia, a 35-year-old dental hygienist from his office. I found out the way most wives do through a careless text message left open on his phone. The message was explicit enough to make my stomach turn, but what hurt more was the casual way Patricia referred to our home, our life, as if I was just an obstacle to remove. The divorce proceedings lasted 8 brutal months. Marcus fought me on everything from custody arrangements to who got to keep our wedding china. He hired an expensive lawyer and tried to paint me as an unstable mother who had driven him away with my demands and expectations. The irony wasn't lost on me that the man who had been absent for most of Sarah's childhood was suddenly concerned about parental rights when it came to dividing assets. During those dark months, Sarah was my anchor. She was 19 then, home from her sophomore year at college, watching her parents destroy each other in conference rooms filled with lawyers. I tried to shield her from the worst of it, but Sarah has always been perceptive. She would find me crying in the kitchen at 2 in the morning and just sit with me, not saying anything, just being present. Sarah and I had always been close in a way that felt sacred to me. From the time she was 6 years old when Marcus started traveling more for work, it was mostly just the two of us. I was the one who taught her to make pancakes from scratch every Sunday morning. I was the one who drove her to violin lessons, soccer practice, and ballet recitals. When she got her heart broken by her first boyfriend at 16, she called me from school crying, and I picked her up and took her for ice cream without asking questions. But something shifted after the divorce was finalized. Sarah started spending more time with Marcus and Patricia, who had moved into a beautiful new townhouse across town. When I asked Sarah about it, she would say things like, "Dad really needs me right now, Mom. He's struggling with the change." I understood her compassion even if it stung. Sarah has always had a generous heart, sometimes too generous. The changes were subtle at first. Sarah would forget to call me back for days, then apologize, saying she'd been busy with Dad's family dinners. She started mentioning Patricia in casual conversation, sharing little stories about shopping trips and cooking experiments. Each mention felt like a small betrayal, even though I knew I was being unfair. As Sarah's graduation approached, I threw myself into planning mode. I bought a navy blue dress that made me feel confident and elegant. I booked a room at the nicest hotel near her campus, the one with the view of the quad where she'd spent 4 years growing into the brilliant young woman I was so proud of. I researched restaurants for our celebration dinner, looking for someplace special enough to mark this incredible milestone. I even put together a photo album chronicling Sarah's journey from her first day of kindergarten to her college acceptance letter, thinking we could look through it together after the ceremony. Each page represented a moment I had been present for, a decision we had made together, a challenge we had overcome as a team. 2 weeks before graduation, Sarah called me with what seemed like wonderful news. She said she wanted to handle all the arrangements for the day, that she had everything under control and wanted it to be a surprise for me. I felt so touched by her initiative, so proud that my daughter had grown into someone who could take charge and plan something meaningful. "Don't worry about anything, Mom," she had said, her voice bright with excitement. "Just show up looking beautiful and ready to celebrate. I've got everything handled." When I tried to ask about details about timing and where we should meet, Sarah was vague in a way that should have worried me. "Everything will be fine, Mom. Trust me on this one." But I was so caught up in the joy of the moment, so grateful to see Sarah taking initiative, that I ignored the little voice in my head that suggested something felt off. I should have pushed for more information. I should have insisted on being involved in the planning. But I was trying so hard to be the understanding mother, the one who could step back and let her adult daughter take the lead. I thought I was giving Sarah space to show her independence and thoughtfulness. The morning of graduation dawned bright and clear, one of those perfect May days that feels designed for celebrations. I woke up before my alarm, my body humming with excitement and nervous energy. This was the day I had been working toward for 22 years, the culmination of every sacrifice, every late night helping with homework, every dollar stretched to cover tuition and textbooks. I took extra time getting ready, wanting to look my absolute best for Sarah's big moment. The navy dress fit perfectly, and I paired it with the pearl earrings my mother had given me for my own college graduation. I wanted Sarah to see those pearls and remember that she came from a long line of strong, educated women who had fought for their place in the world. I drove to campus with a bouquet of yellow roses on the passenger seat, Sarah's favorite flowers since she was little. I had also brought the photo album I'd been working on, thinking we might have a quiet moment together before or after the ceremony to flip through the memories. The campus was buzzing with activity when I arrived. Families everywhere were taking photos, adjusting graduation caps, and embracing their graduates with tears of joy and pride. The energy was infectious, and I felt my heart swell with anticipation as I made my way to the designated meeting spot Sarah had texted me. When I spotted Sarah in her cap and gown, my breath caught in my throat. She looked so beautiful, so grown up, so ready to take on the world. For a moment, all the hurt and confusion of the past 3 years melted away, and I was just a mother, looking at her daughter's greatest achievement. Sarah hugged me when I reached her, but there was something hurried about it, something distracted. She kept glancing around, and I assumed she was looking for friends or professors she wanted me to meet. That's when she said the words that would change everything about that day. "Mom, I need to tell you something about the seating arrangement." My heart started racing in a way that had nothing to do with excitement. The tone of her voice, careful and slightly apologetic, told me I wasn't going to like what came next. "Dad and Patricia are going to sit in the front row," she continued, not quite meeting my eyes. "And I've arranged for you to have a seat in the back section. It's just that Dad helped pay for my last semester when I was short on financial aid, and I thought it would be appropriate to give them the more prominent seats." I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. 22 years of being Sarah's primary parent, of making sure every need was met, every milestone celebrated, every crisis handled, and I was being relegated to the back of the auditorium because Marcus had written one check. But I looked at my daughter's face, saw the hope there that I would understand, that I would be gracious about this devastating decision, and I forced myself to smile. "Of course, sweetie. Whatever makes you happy on your special day." Sarah's relief was visible, and she squeezed my hand. "Thanks for understanding, Mom. You're the best." As she led me toward the auditorium, she filled me in on the rest of the seating arrangement. The front row would include Marcus, Patricia's parents who had flown in from Florida, and Sarah's boyfriend, Jake. It was like a perfectly arranged family portrait with one crucial element missing. My assigned seat was in row 15, surrounded by strangers. I had to squint to see the stage clearly, and I realized that when Sarah walked across to receive her diploma, I would be too far away to catch her eye, too distant to share that crucial moment of connection I had been dreaming about. Sitting there in the back section waiting for the ceremony to begin, I found myself questioning everything. Was I a bad mother? Had I somehow failed Sarah in a way that justified this treatment? I thought about all the nights I had worked double shifts to pay for her violin lessons, all the times I had gone without new clothes, so Sarah could have what she needed for school. I thought about the mother-daughter trips we had taken, just the two of us, building memories I thought would last forever. But as the processional music began and I watched Sarah take her place with her graduating class, I realized that this moment wasn't about me. It was about Sarah, and if sitting in the back was what she needed me to do, then I would do it with grace and dignity. I just never imagined how much that decision would end up costing us both. From my distant vantage point in row 15, I had a clear view of the front row dynamics, and what I saw made my heart sink even further. Marcus and Patricia were acting like the proud parents they had convinced themselves they were. Patricia had brought a professional-grade camera and was taking photos, constantly standing up and moving around to get better angles like she was Sarah's personal photographer. Marcus was wearing the navy blue suit I had bought him for our anniversary 3 years ago, back when I still believed our marriage could be saved. Seeing him in it with his arm casually draped around Patricia's shoulders felt like salt in an open wound. When the ceremony officially began and the graduates started walking across the stage, Patricia became even more animated. She was cheering loudly for students she didn't even know practicing for Sarah's moment. She was wearing a bright red dress that seemed designed to draw attention, and I noticed several other families glancing her way with mild annoyance at her volume. The moment Sarah's name was called, I stood up instinctively, my hands already coming together to applaud. But my voice was lost in the distance and my gesture was invisible from where I sat. The front row erupted in cheers and applause that completely overshadowed anything the rest of us could contribute. Patricia was on her feet waving dramatically while Marcus whistled loudly through his fingers. I watched Sarah cross the stage, shake the dean's hand, and accept her diploma. She looked toward the audience and smiled, clearly seeing the front row celebration. I waved from the back, but I don't think she noticed me at all. It was like I wasn't even there. The woman sitting next to me leaned over during a lull in the proceedings. "Are you here for someone special?" she asked kindly. "I'm Sarah's mother," I replied, pointing toward the stage. She looked confused. "Sarah's mother? But why are you sitting back here? Shouldn't you be in the family section?" I didn't have an answer that wouldn't sound pathetic, so I just smiled and said, "It's complicated family dynamics." After the ceremony ended, there was the traditional photo session on the lawn. I watched from a distance as Sarah posed with the front row group first. Patricia positioned herself right next to Sarah, beaming like a proud mother. Marcus stood on Sarah's other side, his hand on her shoulder in that possessive way that used to make me feel secure when we were married. Patricia's parents flanked the group, and Jake completed the picture. They looked like a perfect, happy family, and I realized that's exactly what Sarah was trying to create. A neat, clean narrative where everyone had their place and played their role. I waited for 20 minutes before it was my turn for photos with Sarah. By then, she was tired and distracted, ready to move on to the next part of the day. We managed 3 quick shots before Patricia called out, "Sarah, honey, we need to head to the restaurant if we want to keep our reservation." Our photo session was over before it really began. As I looked at the camera's preview screen, I could see that even in our pictures together, Sarah looked like she was already thinking about something else. I wasn't even getting her full attention for our few minutes together. The contrast was stark and heartbreaking. I had given 22 years to raising this young woman, and I was getting the scraps of her attention on the day that should have been our shared triumph. "Thanks for being so understanding about everything, Mom," Sarah said, giving me another quick hug. "I know this day has been a little unconventional, but it means so much to me that you're here." I wanted to say so many things. I wanted to remind her of all the times it had been just us, all the moments when I had been her everything. But I could see Patricia watching us from a few feet away, and I didn't want to create a scene that would embarrass Sarah on her graduation day. "I'm proud of you, sweetheart," was all I managed to say. So very proud. As we prepared to head to the restaurant, I felt like I was walking towards some kind of execution. If the seating arrangement at graduation had been painful, I could only imagine what lunch was going to bring. The restaurant Marcus had chosen was the kind of upscale establishment that screamed success and sophistication. It was exactly the type of place he loved to frequent when he wanted to impress someone or make a statement about his status. The hostess led us to a large round table in the main dining room, and I realized immediately that even here the seating arrangement had been carefully orchestrated. Marcus positioned himself at what was clearly the head of the table, with Patricia to his right and Sarah to his left. I found myself seated between Patricia's parents, a quiet couple from Florida who seemed nice enough but clearly didn't know who I was or what my role in Sarah's life had been. Patricia's father, Frank, tried to make conversation by asking about my connection to Sarah. When I explained that I was her mother, he looked confused and glanced around the table as if trying to reconcile this information with the seating arrangement and overall family dynamics. "Oh," he said finally. "I'm sorry, I thought Patricia was Sarah's mother." "Stepmother," I clarified gently, though the word felt like glass in my mouth. The lunch conversation centered around Marcus and Patricia's stories about Sarah's recent achievements and their role in supporting her. I sat there listening to them talk about their daughter, while I remained largely ignored by the conversation flow. When the wine arrived, Marcus stood up to make a toast. "I want to say how proud I am to be here today, celebrating our daughter's graduation." He began, his voice carrying the confident tone I had once found attractive. "Sarah, watching you grow into the accomplished young woman you are today has been one of my greatest joys. Building a strong family foundation with Patricia has allowed us to give you the support and stability you needed to succeed." The word "our" hit me like a physical blow. Marcus was rewriting history in real time, creating a narrative where he and Patricia were the primary forces in Sarah's success. The years I had spent as a single mother working multiple jobs to keep Sarah in good schools and extracurricular activities were being erased with casual, possessive pronouns. Patricia stood up to add to the toast, and what she said next nearly broke my composure entirely. Sarah has become like my own daughter over these past 3 years. Watching her grow and achieve her dreams has been my greatest joy. I'm so honored to be part of her journey. 3 years. Patricia had been in Sarah's life for 3 years, and she was claiming the joy of watching her grow. I had been there for the sleepless nights when Sarah was teething the homework battles in elementary school, the teenage heartbreaks and friendship dramas, the college application stress and financial aid applications. Sarah's response was the final knife twist. She stood up, walked around the table, and gave Patricia a long emotional hug. "Thank you for being such an amazing stepmom," she said, her voice thick with genuine feeling. "I don't know what Dad and I would have done without you these past few years." I sat there, wine glass in hand, watching my daughter embrace the woman who had helped destroy our family, the woman who was now being celebrated as Sarah's emotional support system. I thought about all the times Sarah had called me crying about some college crisis, all the care packages I had sent during finals week, all the late night phone calls where I had talked her through anxiety attacks and relationship problems. When the check arrived, Marcus calculated the split in a way that automatically excluded my portion, as if it was a given that I wouldn't be contributing to this celebration of my own daughter's achievement. Sarah didn't object or suggest that maybe her mother should be included in the gesture. Sitting there at that table, surrounded by people who were treating me like an unwelcome guest at my own daughter's graduation celebration, I realized that something had to change. I couldn't continue to accept this treatment, this systematic erasure of my role in Sarah's life. I couldn't keep smiling and nodding while other people claimed credit for the work I had done. I excused myself to go to the restroom, but I wasn't planning to just powder my nose and return to the table. I had a phone call to make, and a plan was already forming in my mind. Sometimes when people underestimate you, that's the perfect opportunity to remind them who they're dealing with. In the restaurant's elegant restroom, I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking slightly, but not from nervousness. I was angry, but it was the kind of clear, focused anger that leads to action rather than tears. My first call was to the restaurant manager. I asked to speak with him privately, and when he arrived, I explained that I was Sarah's mother and that I wanted to arrange a surprise celebration in one of their private dining rooms. I gave him my credit card and booked their nicest private space for 4 o'clock that afternoon. "I'll need you to coordinate with the bakery across the street," I told him. "I want to order a custom graduation cake for my daughter. Something elegant with yellow roses if possible." Next, I called Emma, Sarah's best friend from high school. Emma had remained close to Sarah throughout college, and she knew better than anyone the real story of our family dynamics. "Emma, it's Denise. I need a favor, and I need it fast." I explained what was happening and what I had in mind. "Can you be at Romano's restaurant at 4 o'clock? I'm organizing a real celebration for Sarah, and I need people there who actually know her story." Emma didn't hesitate. "Mrs. Johnson, I'll be there. And I think I know some other people who would want to come too. This is long overdue." My next call was to Dr. Williams, Sarah's favorite professor from her major. I had met him at several parent weekends over the years, and he had always been gracious about acknowledging my role as Sarah's supporter throughout her academic journey. "Dr. Williams, this is Denise, Sarah's mother. I'm arranging a surprise celebration for her graduation this afternoon, and I was hoping you might be able to join us. I think Sarah would be thrilled to have you there." He agreed immediately, saying he had been hoping to congratulate Sarah personally, but hadn't been able to find her after the ceremony. The most important call was to Marcus's mother, Ruth. Despite everything that had happened with the divorce, Ruth and I had maintained a good relationship. She had always appreciated how I had raised Sarah, and she had been quietly horrified by Marcus's affair and subsequent marriage to Patricia. "Ruth, it's Denise. I need your help with something, and I need you to trust me on this." When I explained what I was planning, Ruth was silent for a moment. Then she said, "It's about time someone reminded that boy who really raised his daughter. I'll be there, and I'll bring the photo albums I've been keeping of Sarah's childhood. Marcus may have forgotten, but I haven't." While I was making these calls, I was also mentally preparing. I gathered the photos from my purse, including several pictures of Sarah throughout the years that I had been carrying to show people during graduation weekend. I had copies of school records, medical files, and even some of the handwritten letters Sarah had sent me during her freshman year when she was homesick and struggling with the transition to college life. This wasn't going to be a petty revenge scheme or an attempt to embarrass anyone. This was going to be a truthful presentation of Sarah's real story told by the people who had actually been present for it. I returned to the table acting completely normal, participating in the small talk and smiling at the appropriate moments. Marcus and Patricia were so convinced they had successfully managed the narrative of the day that they didn't notice anything different about my demeanor. I watched them continue to bask in their self-created roles as Sarah's primary support system, and I felt a calm certainty about what I was about to do. They had underestimated me, dismissed me, and tried to erase me from my own daughter's story. But I had spent 22 years documenting that story, nurturing those relationships, and building a foundation of truth that no amount of recent financial support could replace. At 3:30, I suggested we all have coffee to extend our celebration. I wanted to make sure we were still at the restaurant when my surprise was ready to unfold. "What a lovely idea," Patricia said. "We have nowhere else to be. This has been such a perfect day." Perfect. That was exactly what she thought it was. But she had no idea what perfect actually looked like when it came to celebrating Sarah. At exactly 4 o'clock, the restaurant manager approached our table with a polite smile and addressed Sarah directly. "Ms. Sarah, you have some guests waiting for you in our private dining room. They said it's a surprise celebration arranged by your family." Sarah looked around the table in confusion. What guests? I didn't know about any private dining room arrangement. Marcus and Patricia exchanged glances, clearly as surprised as Sarah. I maintained a neutral expression, but inside I felt a surge of satisfaction at their bewilderment. "Well," I said calmly, "I suppose we should go see who's waiting for you." The walk to the private dining room felt like the longest and shortest journey of my life. I could feel the tension in our little group as everyone tried to figure out what was happening. Sarah kept looking at Marcus and Patricia, assuming they must have arranged something, while they looked increasingly uncomfortable. When we opened the door to the private room, Sarah gasped audibly. Emma was there, along with Dr. Williams' grandmother Ruth and 3 close family friends of mine who had known Sarah since she was little. The room had been decorated with photos of Sarah spanning from her baby pictures to her college acceptance letter arranged in a timeline along the walls, but it wasn't just a photo display. Each image was accompanied by a small handwritten note explaining the context, the challenges we had faced, and the achievements we had celebrated together. The central table held a beautiful graduation cake decorated with yellow sugar roses, and next to it was a guest book filled with messages from people who had supported Sarah throughout her real journey. "Surprise," Emma called out, but her voice carried an edge that suggested this wasn't going to be the kind of surprise Marcus and Patricia were expecting. Dr. Williams stepped forward first. "Sarah, I wanted to congratulate you personally and to acknowledge the incredible support system that made your success possible." He looked directly at me as he spoke. "Your mother attended every single parent-teacher conference for 4 years. She never missed one, even when she had to leave work early or drive through snowstorms. In all my years of teaching, I've rarely seen such dedicated involvement in a student's academic journey." Emma was next, and her words carried the weight of years of friendship and observation. "Sarah, do you remember when you broke your leg sophomore year during that skiing trip? Your mom slept in the hospital chair for 5 straight nights. She never left your side, not even to go home and shower properly. She was afraid you'd wake up scared and need her." I watched Sarah's face as these stories unfolded, stories she had forgotten or perhaps taken for granted. Her expression was shifting from confusion to something that looked like dawning realization. Grandmother Ruth's contribution was the most devastating to Marcus and Patricia's narrative. She had brought a folder full of documents that painted a very different picture of Sarah's upbringing than the one Marcus had been telling. "Your father never sent child support payments on time," Ruth said gently but firmly. "Your mother worked 3 jobs during your middle school years to keep you in private school and pay for your violin lessons. She never complained, never made you feel guilty about the sacrifices she was making, but I watched her wear the same clothes for years because every extra dollar went toward your needs." The room was completely silent now. Marcus and Patricia stood frozen near the doorway, clearly realizing that their carefully constructed narrative was being dismantled piece by piece. I opened the scrapbook I had been carrying and showed Sarah pages of documentation I had kept over the years. Receipts for every tuition payment, copies of every medical form I had filled out, photographs of every school event I had attended alone because Marcus was traveling for work. I brought these not to embarrass anyone, I said quietly, but because I realized today that the truth of your childhood had been lost somewhere along the way. I didn't do all of this for recognition or gratitude. I did it because I loved you. But respect is earned through presence and sacrifice, not through recent financial contributions or convenient narratives. Sarah looked at the timeline of photos, really looked at them, and I could see her remembering. The Halloween costumes I had stayed up all night making by hand, the science fair projects we had worked on together at the kitchen table, the countless hours I had spent helping her practice violin, even though I didn't play an instrument myself. Mom, she whispered, and for the first time all day her voice carried real emotion when she said it. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. I knew all of this happened, but I didn't think about what it meant that you did it all alone. Patricia tried to salvage the situation. Of course, we appreciate everything Denise did in the past. She said, her voice tight with forced diplomacy. But we've been building our own relationship with Sarah, and that's important too. Emma turned to face Patricia with an expression that could have frozen water. Building a relationship for 3 years doesn't erase 22 years of daily sacrifice and unconditional love. You can't buy the title of parent with recent kindness. The truth was out there now, documented and witnessed by people who had actually been present for Sarah's journey. Marcus and Patricia could no longer control the narrative or diminish my role in my daughter's life. The immediate aftermath of our private dining room gathering was both heartbreaking and healing. Sarah approached me with tears streaming down her face, and for the first time in years when she hugged me, it felt like she was actually seeing me, really understanding who I was and what I had been to her. Mom, I'm so sorry, she said, her voice breaking. I've been so focused on not hurting Dad's feelings and making Patricia feel included that I forgot to protect the person who actually raised me. We found a quiet corner where we could talk privately while the others mingled and shared more stories about Sarah's childhood. Sarah explained that Marcus had been putting subtle pressure on her for months to treat Patricia as an equal parent, making her feel guilty for any loyalty she showed to me. He kept saying that families need to move forward, not backward, Sarah told me. He made me feel like acknowledging everything you did for me was somehow disrespecting his new marriage. I thought if I could just keep everyone happy, we could all be one big family. I could see the manipulation for what it was now, and I felt a surge of anger at Marcus for putting Sarah in such an impossible position. But I also understood my daughter's heart. Sarah has always been a peacekeeper, always tried to make everyone around her comfortable and happy. You don't have to choose sides, I told her gently, calm. But you do need to choose respect. And that means not allowing anyone to rewrite history or minimize the relationships that built you into who you are today. The conversation was interrupted by Marcus approaching us, his face flushed with embarrassment and anger. Denise, this was completely inappropriate. You've turned Sarah's graduation day into some kind of twisted revenge fantasy. I stood up slowly, feeling calmer than I had all day. This wasn't revenge, Marcus. This was truth. If the truth makes you uncomfortable, maybe you should examine why that is. Patricia joined him, her earlier composure completely gone. You had no right to ambush us like this. Sarah is part of our family now, and you need to accept that things have changed. Sarah has always been part of my family, I replied quietly. She's been my family since the day she was born. What changed is that you decided my 22 years of single parenting wasn't worth acknowledging or respecting. The confrontation could have escalated, but Sarah stepped between us. Stop, she said firmly, Bama. Just stop. This is supposed to be about my graduation, not about your adult problems with each other. She was right, and I could see that continuing this argument would only hurt Sarah more. The point had been made, the truth had been revealed, and now it was time to let the consequences unfold naturally. Over the following weeks and months, Sarah began reaching out to me more frequently. She started calling just to talk, not because she needed something or was in crisis. We instituted a weekly dinner tradition where she would come to my apartment and we would cook together, just like when she was little. She also began setting firmer boundaries with Marcus and Patricia, insisting that family gatherings include appropriate recognition of my role in her life. She started referring to Patricia as her stepmother in conversations, rather than simply as Patricia, which was a small but significant acknowledgement of our respective relationships to her. Marcus and Patricia's response was to gradually distance themselves from both Sarah and me. They seemed to realize that their attempts to rewrite history had been exposed, and that continuing to push their narrative would only make them look worse. Patricia stopped posting photos with Sarah on social media, and Marcus became less available for family dinners and holiday celebrations. For my part, I focused on rebuilding my own sense of self-worth and independence. I joined a support group for divorced mothers who had been marginalized in their children's lives. I started taking art classes and reconnecting with friends I had neglected during the years when I was focused entirely on single parenting and then on navigating my divorce. The experience taught me that love without respect is really just manipulation in disguise. For years, I had accepted diminished roles and dismissive treatment because I thought that was what unconditional love looked like. But I learned that teaching people how to treat you, that is actually one of the greatest gifts you can give them. That graduation day became a turning point, not just for my relationship with Sarah, but for my understanding of my own worth. Sometimes, the people who hurt us most are those we love most, but standing up for yourself teaches everyone in your life how to treat you going forward. Today, Sarah and I have a stronger, more honest relationship than we had when she was growing up. It's built on a foundation of mutual respect rather than obligation or guilt. She understands now that real family bonds are created through daily acts of love and sacrifice, not through convenient narratives or recent financial contributions. The most important lesson I learned that day was that truth has a way of surfacing when it's most needed. You can try to bury it, ignore it, or rewrite it, but authentic relationships are built on reality, not fantasy. And sometimes, when people think they can erase you from your own story, that's exactly when you need to stand up and remind everyone who you really are. If you've ever felt overlooked or undervalued by people who should know better, I want you to know that your contributions matter, your sacrifices have meaning, and your truth deserves to be acknowledged. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself in a situation where people were trying to diminish your importance? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Please take a moment to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life stories, and share this with anyone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by other people's narratives. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to let others treat you with anything less than the respect you've earned. I hope your own relationships are built on foundations of truth, respect, and genuine appreciation for all the ways you've shown up for the people you love.